This episode of Shop Talk Live is brought to you by FineWoodworking.com, your go-to source for woodworking expertise. Join to get exclusive access to thousands of articles and videos. Membership is a low price of $4.99 per month or $34.95 for the whole year. Print subscribers pay just $14.95 per year.
Welcome to Shop Talk Live, Fine Woodworking's bi-weekly podcast. I'm your host, Tom McKenna, and with me this week are Mike Pekovich.
Hey, guys.
And Ben Strano.
Hello.
And behind the camera, as always, is Jeff Rose.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi,
everybody.
Let's jump right to the big cues. This one comes from Chris, and Chris says, I'm designing a trestle table. I'm hung up on how to attach the top to the leg battens in a way that allows for wood movement and keeps any fasteners used hidden. The table will be used to serve communion, and since it will be on an elevated platform, the underside will be visible. Any ideas?
I want to apologize to Chris because I'm sure he's built like 4 tables since he sent this in.
A little old, a little long in the
This
tooth.
question kept getting bumped.
Well, maybe we should call him.
Number 5, getting bumped.
We should call him and find out what he did.
Yeah,
That might be the answer.
right. And let us know what you actually did.
Yeah,
Pause this, Chris, and then let us know what you did.
Well, assuming maybe he's still waiting on an answer, I think there are some answers to this specific question, but maybe you're asking the wrong question here. The assumption is that any fastener is going to look ugly. The other way you can go about it is how can because I can see the bottom, which is kind of a cool thing. It's a part of the table that you never see, which is why you put ugly fasteners underneath the table. So maybe think of it more in terms of what kind of fastener can I use that looks really cool, because this is one instance where you actually get to see it.
That is
Just blew your mind. Yeah, pretty
All
much.
right.
And with that, I'd probably go to like an Andrew Hunter article who did a whole article on attaching tabletops with dovetailed battens.
Yeah, that was very cool.
So that would be kind of neat. But back to the original question, if you want to hide it, I just did this, and it's not a new thing. I had seen other people do it as well. I built the tabletop for a little sewing table I made recently in 2 halves, and I attached a dovetail cleat to the top of the little stretchers, and I routed dovetail slots in each half, bring them together on top of the cleat. Boom, you don't see anything. But then you don't see anything. I mean,
Yeah, you want to see it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is an opportunity, I guess, to maybe get some blacksmith made hardware or something like that. But
Blacksmith.
yeah, I mean, there's always plugs you can plug.
Yeah, but man, if you see a plug, it's like
plug
you're not
is more-
supposed to see it.
it's
and
more
you see
jarring.
it.
Really looking.
Okay, this
visible,
comes to my
man.
next point, which is I'm revealing maybe too much about myself, but when I'm in services of any sort, my mind is wandering big time.
I'm looking at plugs.
And if there's any woodworking to be had whatsoever, I am scoping that out, and I'm going to see a plug. And it's just going to ruin my day. So
you know what? I actually,
Okay.
I remember as a child in the church pew in front of us, they had the little pillowed plugs. You know that you
Yeah.
could actually. I used to pop them out.
Did you pop them? I popped them too.
So
You guys are going to hell.
Too late. Yeah.
Well, one thing I was just thinking about, and I don't know if it's doable, but for this type of table, if he didn't, he could probably even just get away without using any fasteners. What I did for my cabinet on stand, I didn't screw it to the base. I had dowels that I put into the frame, and I just plopped the cabinet on top of that. If you were to do something like this and maybe slot, I don't know how you'd allow for wood movement. You'd have to slot one of the holes a little bit, but it would hide the fasteners. But
it's not going to hold it down. I mean, if he's using the battens to keep from bowing,
true,
then
true.
that's not going to hold it down. But it's an interesting one.
The leg battens.
Maybe we kept avoiding this one on purpose. I think your initial.
I think if you're gonna go, I think Mike's advice go visual and try to do something creative on the bottom, and it seems pretty smart. And Andrew Hunter's article was pretty clear. The technique, the way he presented it, it didn't look that hard.
For Andrew Hunter.
For Andrew Hunter. That's what I mean. Yeah. Maybe call Andrew and have him build a table for you. All right, let's move on to question 2. And by the way, Chris, if you did figure it out,
let us know.
This one comes from John. And John writes, I'd love to be able to take a real set of in-person classes, both because it would be great fun and because it's the best way for me to learn. Unfortunately, I have to travel often for work and usually with little notice, so it's pretty hard to commit to a day or a week of that for that sort of thing. Can you recommend any good resources to build fundamental woodworking skills through thought-out progression of exercises and/or projects, but without having to commit to a real-life class? FineWoodworking.com.
Next
question. No, I mean, our video workshops are great for, I think, folks like John who don't have, a week to commit to a class. They can just sit on a plane and watch an episode or 2 or more of, we have techniques classes. Mike did a great workshop on hand tool skills and tuning up hand planes and tuning them up. And we've got a bunch of different project videos that illustrate different skills. So that's one way.
I mean, I think I would look into, you got to be able to set aside a weekend or something, right?
You have to be able to practice somewhere.
Yeah, but I've only taken 2 woodworking classes. One was the design class with Mike, and that was a design class. It wasn't a whole lot of woodworking, but there was something great about setting aside an entire weekend and doing nothing but that. And the same for the weekend. It's like, if it's a priority, I guess you have to try and, I don't know if you can take vacation time or whatever. I don't know. I understand how he couldn't take like a every Tuesday night thing.
Yeah.
That would be
a weekend.
difficult.
Yeah, I agree. A weekend would be looking at like a weekend type class. I remember I took a hand tool class with Phil Lowe at the Center for Furniture Craftsmanship, and it was a great week. It was, 5 days of just being in the shop and learning about stuff. So there's nothing better than that experience if you can do it. But if you can spread it out over the weekends, I think it's a good option.
When you guys mentioned tracking down a local guild or something?
Yeah, I talked about that. That's a really good. I think if there's a guild in your area, join it, and it's a good way to. These guys often have Q&A sessions, or they talk about problems that they're having, and there's bound to be a master woodworker in that guild who can offer some guidance or some skill.
At the very least, there's a woodworker better than you.
Yeah, so
that's
there's
all you need.
A little safety net where if you jump into something, it's a little over your head. Hey, can you come over and take a look at this? That's a really great sort of resource to have.
And guilds a lot of times have demonstrations and the meetings and things like that. And for me, the biggest eye-opening thing was actually using a hand plane that was set up properly.
That's a huge thing.
And you can't get that elsewhere other than in person.
Yeah.
So like at a guild meeting, if there was somebody there who was demonstrating hand planing, and you could go and just push a couple shavings out of that hand plane and know, okay, this is my goal. This is my mark.
Well, here's another thing. I mean, honestly, there are a lot of traveling woodworking type shows these days. I mean, there is the woodworking shows, which I think they're primarily kind of on the eastern side of the United States, but Lee Nielsen does these traveling hand tool shows, and they're on the West Coast. I think they were just in England for, I can't remember what the name of that hand tool event in England is, but they have experts there. But yeah, that's where you can go and feel like what a hand plane is supposed to, or feel like when it's all tuned up. And they often have classes and seminars and different experts there for Q&A sessions. So that's another option. It's just, you got to get it when you can.
Another thought too is going back to the video workshop idea is something like Matt Waita's Toolbox, the North Bennett Street Toolbox. It's like that is a specific project. That project is set up specifically to teach you a set of fundamental skills.
Yes.
Through a project.
Right.
There's a reason why it is such a daunting project, because there are so many types of joinery involved, so many different disciplines involved in it.
But you laid it out in like 2,000 episodes. It's all nicely broken down.
It's broken down into an easy 412 hours of video. It's only like 7 or 8 or something.
Well, maybe John is traveling to China sometime soon.
Yeah.
But
Anyway, okay, are we done? I mean, not with the podcast, with the question.
well, I mean, the one thing good is if you can work with someone. You mentioned picking up a tool which is tuned up and sharp and ready to use, so you know what a good tool does. The second thing, I think, if you can work with someone, when I'm teaching, I realized really early that there's only so much I could communicate standing in front of people demonstrating, because it's like, okay, that's how it's done right, good. Now go back to your bench. And then it's really not until you pick up a tool and you try it out and things start to happen.
Yeah.
That's where I can really offer my best advice, because it's like, oh, okay, here, try this instead. And then to have that reference of doing it not the right way, but then try it this way and then it works. I think that one-on-one ability to work with someone goes a long way.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention something along those lines, because there's a lot more, I'm kind of focusing on hand tools, but there's a lot more than getting the blade sharp. I mean, the whole setup of a smoothing plane, it's this step-by-step process, and then you've got to take a shave and then figure out, okay, it's not right. What's the next step? What do I do?
How do I fix it?
And so that took me a long time to figure out. And the truth is, I learned a lot from being on the job and going to visit Chris Gochner, and I worked with him on a few hand tool or hand plane articles, and he did a great fundamentals on hand plane setup, and he had this really cool. At the end of it, I think Mike came up with the idea, but we came up with a troubleshooting guide. So, hey, this is happening, do this. This is happening, do that. And, just learning that is, it's a huge step in building skills.
But I mean, just being around someone else woodworking, you're going to learn something.
Right. And that's the benefit, like getting back to what Mike was saying, is having access to a person, that could, you've got it sharp. Okay, now I'm taking the hand plane, and having that person say, okay, this is what's happening. Here's kind of the physics behind it, and here's what to adjust and how to do it.
But it doesn't have to be Chris Gochner.
No.
It could be just somebody who's put 100 hours in behind a hand plane, not 10,000.
Yeah.
But you're gonna, like, Barry and I are our new associate editor. Him and I are down in the shop all the time together, and we're both learning. We're both figuring stuff out.
You're writing pallet jacks. You posted it.
Yeah, but yeah, that too. But I mean,
no, I'm kidding.
But it's hey, what I saw, I'm struggling with this, and we're working together and figuring things out, and it's great because we talk to you guys at lunch and stuff like that. But just being in person around somebody else, working through problems and figuring things out is valid as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we often think of this as, it is a solitary, for the most part, craft, but it is cool to have like-minded folks around to bounce ideas and problems off.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Ben, on one hand, woodworking is ultimately, it's an exercise in creative problem solving. I mean, there's going to be things you just got to kind of figure out. There's not enough information you can input into your brain to be able to tackle any problem without scratching your head just a little bit.
Yeah, and also limited by your tool set.
Sure. The one thing with a video series are really good, and it's a little bit counter to your point, is that there's individual skills which you need to learn. You got to get sharp, learn your hand tools, learn how to use a table saw, rip and cross cut. But then there's sort of like the big picture, the overarching concept of how you get from lumber to a finished piece of furniture, those building strategies. And watching Tim Rousseau build a little nightstand with a door and a drawer, or Steve Latta go about doing stringing and banding, these guys are brilliant in terms of their engineering minds, in terms of looking at a somewhat complex thing and breaking it down into really simple steps. And those steps may seem arbitrary or unrelated in and of themselves, but if you can sort of get a sense of the big picture of how they fit into that scheme, that's a tremendous, I think that's at the next level of woodworking. When you get to that point, you kind of stop stumbling from, okay, what do I do next? What do I do next? Oh, I should have done that back then, but now I've already done this. How do I, instead of like getting over, always sort of tackling problems that you sort of created for yourself, you start to be able to create, processes and workflows that kind of do away with those problems to begin with. And I'm not sure if that's second or third level, but that's what you get from watching Matt Wade go about making something, or Steve Latter.
And it's why those guys teach.
Yes.
And it's funny from my experience, as I do more and more furniture making and just woodworking in general, the more experience I have, the more I can see 2 steps ahead. What I'm doing now. Okay, what do I have to do next? So I'm not screwing up anything in terms of like when it comes time to assembly. I don't want to work myself into a corner.
Like in that, I used to watch 300 hours of video before I.
And now you're making them.
Yeah, I literally made a career out of watching woodworking videos. But I used to watch 300 hours of video about dovetailing before I picked up a saw, and that was counterproductive. It's like you got to pick up a saw, you got to cut that dovetail eventually. So it's so easy to get frozen because everything is precious. That box I'm building right now is the last box I'll ever build. And I want generations of Stranos to fight over it, 300 years from now. No, it's junk and it's probably in the garbage right now because I'm capable of building a box 10 times better. And in 10 years, the one I built today is junk, So I think it's easy to get wrapped up in trying to learn things and not just go out into the shop and build something. And don't be too precious about it. And try your hardest and do it to the best level that you can.
Sure.
But be in the shop. Do it.
I mean, the thing about John, when getting back to John's distant point, was sometimes woodworking is about self-discovery. And I've just gone out to the shop sometimes and figured it out. Just kind of, get the fundamentals and then figure it out. Like when you're designing or building a piece, sometimes you're going to make a mistake and, throw it away and start over again. So
it's getting a little deep. Self-discovery.
Yeah.
Who am I?
I'm one plane shaving away from Zen. Nope, one more.
Wow, that felt great. That's like better than yoga. Where are we, Ben? Here we are.
Segment 1.
We're Newtown, Connecticut, Tom. It is time for our all-time favorite tool of all time for this week. Who's going first? Ben?
I'll go.
Good.
Bench grinder.
Good. Next.
What are you talking about? The 2 wheels that spin around?
Yeah. Just the spinny stone.
Yep.
Jam a blade in it. No, it's just I've been experimenting with different sharpening techniques lately, and the need for a hollow grind has proven to be important to me.
Going to like sort of a hand honing route?
Yeah, freehand.
Awesome.
And I've discovered that any time I've experimented with freehand sharpening, why am I talking about it like it's like it's drugs or something? I don't know. But anytime that I have freehand sharpened in the past, it's always just flopped. And I think it was because a lack of a hollow grind. And now we've got that slow speed grinder at the shop, and I grind the blade. It's so much easier to freehand sharpen that way.
You rock it until it sets down. Yeah.
And just don't think about it. And that's the aspect of it that I really like.
But that grinder also has a nice little tool rest, right?
It's got the Veritas.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Because one of the things it's funny, I actually have gone away from hollow grinding. And
I realized that in the middle of my spiel that I think I'm
it's funny. I mean, I just, I find that a granite plate and the coarse sandpaper, and my I have a Veritas Mark II honing guide, and I just go to town on that, and it's just as fast, and I think, and it's a lot more. If you don't grind every day or do it frequently, it's so easy to burn the tip or get it out of square, and using the honing guide with the granite plate, I'm perfectly square, and I've got a clean primary bevel within a couple minutes. Really, it's not that difficult, but so it's just funny, different strokes. Do you want a grinder? No, I'd always keep a grinder. You never know when
Tom's selling me tools left and right.
When you'll have to reshape stuff or whatever, and who knows? Maybe down the road I'll go back to freehanding and then I'll do the hollow grind again. But whatever.
I've always used the $10 honing guide,
Right.
and
The Eclipse.
yes,
Cha cha cha.
but
why I
it's
did
always just been really finicky to me. And Barry and I were talking about it this morning in the shop, and I feel like I've got a little issue where if that blade's gonna be 25 degrees, I want to know it's 25 degrees, not 25.2 degrees. So the moment I start thinking about angles and getting things exact, I obsess over it. And freehand sharpening to me, you're not going to get it perfect. So, and you don't know what the angle is. So just get it sharp.
What's the angle of your grind? So
Yeah.
you need to obsess over the angle of your grind now.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the next step.
Yes.
But I
Always
feel like
something different to obsess about.
Yeah. But I feel like I've always yearned to freehand sharpen. I yearned for it.
Yearned.
Just because everything else just felt finicky, and everything else felt like I was about to go down a rabbit hole
Hold
of
on.
obsession.
I have the title for the podcast. Ben yearns.
That's not very SEO friendly, Tom. But so that's how this is. It started with my block plane blade,
Yeah.
and now I'm on my low angle jack.
But those inexpensive honing guides, they work best if you set up a jig. I think Mike has one with the stop blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got that, and my Eclipse guide is modified. Actually, Bob gave it to me. It's been ground out and everything,
So he
and
fixed
it
all
works.
up.
It works
Yeah.
great. It's just sitting there with a little screwdriver. It just never felt right to me.
The investment that I made in the Veritas, the Mark II, to me it's so well worth it, because I too struggled with that with the generic or Eclipse honing guide, and it was easy to get the blade out of square when it was in or whatever. But this thing is almost error proof. The whole setup process. It's a little complex to get done, but once you've got the blade in there correctly, it's perfectly square, and you can adjust. If you do a micro bevel on top of the primary bevel, or if you want to do adjust the settings, you can just do it with a click of the knob. It's really quite nice, but it is. It's like I said, it's an investment.
We got a little pins versus tails things going on here.
No,
That's old school shop talk.
no.
Short-lived, old school shop top.
Shop Talk Live, yeah.
Bonk, bonk, bonk.
The only thing, I came from hand honing to honing guides, and it's kind of where I live now. I don't mind busting out, the hand skills and doing it. The only thing I can't do by hand that I can do fairly easily with a jig is to put a slight camber on my plane irons. That's like the only thing where I would definitely pull out a jig for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Mark II comes with a roller that allows you to camber the blade.
This episode of Shop Talk Live.
Shop Talk Live.
Brought to you by Veritas.
Wally Wilson's on the line. All right. How about you, Mike? What's your favorite?
Speaking of classes, I rarely take classes. I've taken less than a handful, not because I don't want to, but I just can't afford it. However, this last weekend, I just got done teaching a rocking chair class where there was a slip seat, and I don't do that kind of upholstery. So I had asked Mike Maselli, who's a fantastic old school upholsterer, to come in and teach a one-day class on upholstering the cushion, which was awesome. So I got to sit in on that. I made my own cushion. It's really fun. Completely different world of skills and techniques, which brings me to we're talking tool, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite tool of all time of the week is
Mike Maselli class.
a magnetic tack hammer.
Those things look awesome.
Yeah. It's like, I've heard of them, but it's like, tacks. What's with tacks? Because you pull out your stapler. No, you don't staple. You tack everything in place. And then if things aren't right, you pull out the tacks and you re-tack it. So the whole notion of tacking down the upholstery on a cushion and readjusting it is something completely foreign to me, because I got my electric staple gun.
Yeah.
I'm just like pop, 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 done, right?
Yeah, look good enough.
Yeah, not even, no. So, okay, so tacking, that's really cool. Old school, you got your tacks. Then you got your magnetic tack hammer. And you just go down, you spread some out on the bench, you pick up one tack with your magnetic tack hammer on the end of it and pop, and you pound it in. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. So
Wow.
half of the tack hammers Mike brought with them weren't magnetic. And
you being the teacher, you grabbed one of
well,
them.
I'm not a teacher anymore. I'm down at the level playing field
okay.
with
All
everyone
right,
else in the class. I'm just, a guy here, but you got to kind of scope out which ones were magnetic and which ones weren't. And there was some surreptitious switching of the magnetic with non-magnetic tack hammers going on throughout the class. No one admitted it, but I would look down and all of a sudden, the nail's not sticking to my tack hammer anymore. And I'd look over and 2 benches down, someone's just going to town with their magnetic tack hammer. So
Can you just magnetize a tack hammer?
I'm sure you could. I guess I would just stick it like a rare earth magnet on the end of it for a while and boom, call
Or
it good.
if you rub the magnet
I don't know.
like in elementary school?
I'm
So
sure you
does
could.
it so it grabs the head. It doesn't grab the shank.
Exactly. Right. Well,
That's
I mean,
weird.
you got skills going on here.
Okay.
Sometimes you've got like one by the head, then like 3 more stuck around the side of it, and you try to tap that one in without the other 3 kind of falling off.
Do they go flying everywhere?
Yeah, and then to watch Mike do it's like one bang. I try. It's like 7. Oh, dang.
They used to make a framing hammer that was kind of like that, where it was had a magnet on one port. You set and then you whack. to
Right, there's
drive
like a
it
little
in.
slot or something.
Yeah,
that you put.
I tried one many years ago when I was building decks, and I could never get the hang of it. But my crew chief was like a whiz at it,
Yeah.
But he also was like the legendary carpenter that Fine Home Building talks about, Larry Hahn, where he could drive a framing nail with one blow, kind of thing. It was like whack, I'm done, moving on.
I can build a house in a day.
Yeah, we're done. But
Pneumatic nailer just slow them down.
yeah, really, magnetic tack hammer.
Yeah, so the
That's
tack
cool.
hammer is cool, but really it's exactly what we're talking about. Where upholstery, you get the right person, you show them what to do. And
And the
this
right
is
tools.
something I've done like a number of times very poorly. And then just to have someone there's like, wait a minute, just do this. And it's just like, oh, this is really cool. And now I know exactly. It wasn't like I wasn't trying hard enough before. It's just that the way I went about it guaranteed a really bad result.
You just didn't know the steps.
Yeah.
Well, here it is.
Yeah.
You didn't have the lesson,
And now I do.
the one-on-one.
Now I'm all about upholstery. Every piece of furniture, Kumiko and upholstery.
Look for it in the next issue of Fine Woodworking. Fundamentals. Upholstery.
couch.
It's my turn. Oh,
It's
yeah,
your
it
turn.
is. Well,
Didn't I already ruin yours? Oh no, you've got.
ruined mine. You all right?
I thought I stole your thunder with the honing guy.
No. The my all-time favorite tool of all time for this week is something that I didn't expect to buy, but I was at the Connecticut Valley School of Woodworking. Bob Van Dyke School was having an open house, and Mike was there, and a few of our other authors were there. And what Bob does on that day, he has basically a big, huge tool sale, used tool
Big
sale.
parking lot tool set.
Yeah, it's like, the highlight. Well, forgive me, Bob, but for me, it was the highlight of my day. But I've been forever, and Ben is he's gonna squawk, but I've been looking for like a small set of carving gouges, because I'd like to start doing some carving. And
Talking about
but I'm
these
such a
couches for
cheapskate.
years now.
So
I've
I
only
was-
known you 2 years.
I was eyeballing, looking for a selection there, and Mike had a few minutes to walk, and we were going down the aisle, and he reached into this box and he pulls this spoke shave out, and he says, "This thing is great." And I was like, I don't have a spoke shave. I used to have a round bottomed one,
Yes, you used to.
but
Now I have a round bottom one.
but it's not, I don't do chair making, so it's not the best choice for that. But anyway, Mike pointed this out and said, "This is a really cool spoke shave. It's the Stanley 53." And it was fully intact. But what's really cool about this that he pointed out is when you adjust the blade in or out, there is some sort of a mechanism. I don't know how it works, but basically the throat opens and closes as you make the adjustment. So if you want a deep cut, the throat opens up. So I bought it for $20. It was in really good shape. All I had to do was flatten the sole and tune up the blade. And
Does that top thumb screw?
that's what. Yeah, there's a thumb screw. You turn that.
The blade
and that moves it in.
screws in place. The blade
Yes.
does not actually move up and down.
Yeah, and I'm shocked. I got it tuned up, and now it's working pretty well for me. And I have a smooth move associated with the sharpening of this blade until I got it sharp. But for $20, and probably all told, maybe 2 hours worth of work, I have this really great spoke shave. And the truth is, I'm surprised that other manufacturers never kind of picked up on this design. It's like ingenious.
Yeah, I think Kuntz makes one now. I don't want to say it's not worth buying, but I wouldn't buy it. However, this one is really cool. Yeah, give that. So there's a thumb screw.
do you have it like precisely set?
It's set for a heavier than
Can I
normal
move
cut.
it?
But yeah.
So as you turn it,
Not that far.
it extends the blade, but it also pivots and the throat opens. And then as
Yeah.
you retract the blade, the throat tightens up. It's this
Right.
bizarre kind of all-in-one mechanism.
It is. And I look at it and I can't figure it out. It's all the mechanism is kind of hidden inside the body, it looks like, but it's really cool. So
The
when
blade is moving, not just the
Yeah,
mouth.
well, you can feel it.
they're both moving. So what's really nifty about it is that you get it set up, and Bob Van Dyke has this, and he gave me a 5-minute setup on it, discussion on it, or lesson rather, and you set it for basically get it set up for a medium cut, and it's so nice. I mean, it's like instant. Whereas before, you're kind of, if you have a wooden shave, you're tapping. If you've got a different kind of shave, you're still kind of trying to get that blade set, and often there are two knobs, but it works really well. I'm super happy, and $20, I'm even more happy. Now, if only I could find those darn gouges.
You've had them in your hand twice.
I did, but I bought a spoke shave instead. I'm not disappointed. I'm just, waiting a little longer. All right. We getting back to some questions? I think we are. Okay. This one comes from Randy, and this is going to be good. I recently needed to route some circle cutouts. I just lost my audio. Oh, came back. I made a circle template. I routed the first 2 circles with the template perfectly. On the last circle, the router bit caught just as I was finishing up, and as you can probably guess, some significant tear out resulted. Although I have some guesses on how this happened, I'm really not completely sure. Any good suggestions on how to avoid this in the future? It seems like it shouldn't happen since I started out in the right direction against the rotation of the bit.
Do we ever find out what he's cutting
No,
holes
I
and
didn't
stuff
email
for?
him.
We were thinking what? Cornhole?
Cornhole
Speaker
or
cabinet.
speaker cabinets.
Yeah.
So, assuming we're cutting a circle.
3 circles though didn't
Yeah.
have any of those options.
And
Maybe
he didn't say what
could be like
size
the
either.
family outhouse.
It could be.
It's a 3-holer.
That's wow. That got dark really fast.
It's just weird, man.
Well, that's a different form of cornhole, maybe.
All right.
All right.
So
That's all for this week.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what I mean. My thing was I'm not sure what size he's doing, and
Well, but if it's okay, so if he's routing through solid wood, you're routing a circle. You are guaranteed to go against the grain
Yes.
for a good portion of any circle.
yeah, you're
2 out of 4 quarters.
yeah, you're going
Yes.
uphill twice.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that I would argue that if it's solid wood, there's no way of routing a circle without either flipping the stock and without flipping the stock
Right.
halfway through, or if you're using a template, flipping the template and using a bottom mounted, whether using a top mounted guide bearing or a bottom mounted, you would have to flip the template or the stock at some point.
Right. Either flip them. Yes. I mean, you're going to have to flip the stock. You can leave the template attached and change your bearing orientation
Depends
or
how you attach
remount.
it, yeah.
I mean, you can get by if you say you jigsaw out really close to line, like within a 16th of your routing line, and then you have a nice spiral cut bit. You can do it. You can.
Yeah.
It'll get done.
Get a nice sharp new blade, new bit, and I think that's one thing I would recommend right away.
So my guess is that if you got 2 out of 3 good, then you were probably doing everything just about right. And my guess is that last time around, maybe there's a little bit more waste you were working with. Maybe there was a gnarly piece of grain. But you're absolutely right. You definitely want to be going against the rotation of the bit no matter what. But depending on that grain, it's one of those things you're either going to get away with it or you're not.
And so it sounds like 2 out of 3 times you
You
get
got
away
away
with
with it. So that's not too bad.
Yeah,
So,
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
yeah, I might take those odds.
Yeah, that's good meatloaf.
And then you can get something called like a compression bit. Whiteside makes these bits, which are supposed to be really good for plywood because it gives you a clean cut top and
Yeah,
bottom.
they're called compression bits, right?
But they're also really good for getting away with going against the grain. I use them for pretty much all of my pattern routing whenever I can get away with it.
and Steve Latta raves about them as well.
I feel like from reading this question over and over, I feel like he did not cut them out. He was using the router to cut out the circle. So you couldn't do that with a compression bit because they all have bearings. You can't plunge down with a compression, right?
Huh.
So
I don't know.
yeah.
But we mentioned how you can do like a guide bushing with a template, route a portion of the way down, route your circle,
Flip it.
cut, or you can just cut out, then right to your really close to your routed line, and then use a bearing guided bit to ride that section you'd already routed. And so basically that pre-routed section now kind of acts like your template.
Yeah.
A great example of that is Scott Lewis's greatest cutting board of all time.
Oh, the swervy cutting board, which you see quite a few of around.
Yes, they
It's funny how that happens.
They
have
show
spread. But that's that awesome technique. That's the first time I had seen that. Go halfway through and then
really
bandsaw
smart.
or jigsaw
Yeah, I've
it out.
used that for other never for a circle, but for other
But it worked.
routing. Yeah,
But you would still have grain to contend with.
on the circle.
You still have to pay attention to which direction you're routing against the grain.
Yeah. Yes, but again, the more you can sort of mitigate that.
Yeah. I mean, if
You'd
it's a
be okay.
light cut, if you're really close to the line, I think, and maybe you got to do a little cleanup work.
Yeah.
Don't know.
And why are you routing circles?
That's the big question.
Why are we
Please,
doing
Randy,
this?
we want to know what you're doing.
3 of them.
yeah.
3.
It was 2. That's a set of cornhole boards or a speaker cabinet.
Speaker cabinet, or maybe it's a pet
Could be-
feeding dish. The kind where you insert the steel bowl into the wood
3 of them.
cutout. Maybe he's got 3 dogs, or 2 dogs and a cat.
Let us know, Randy, because it's going to tear us up inside if
Maybe
we don't
he's-
find out
Maybe
soon.
he's got a llama.
Llama red pajama?
Llamas need 3 bowls. I don't know if you knew that.
Really?
Yeah.
Can't tell with you.
All right, let's get to the next question. This one comes from Chris. And Chris says, I've noticed on some pieces I've built that the glue lines in the panels for example, the tabletops, develop a subtle hair-thick ridgeline. I know it's from the glue creeping, but I was wondering what causes it and how to prevent it.
Me too.
Next.
It's happened on occasion. And the only thing I can think of is I think it has to do with the fact that your glue joint isn't quite as really, really flat and clean as it should be, or you're not using enough clamping pressure. I think there's just too much glue left between the boards to actually create a glue line itself, as opposed to really clean glue joint, really smashed together with clamps. There's no line of glue there. I mean, that is just wood on wood. That's the only thing I can think of, because it happens to me. It used to happen to me more. It happens a lot less. And I just think my techniques have maybe gotten better.
It happened on my dining room table, and it's a burden for me.
How thick? 3/4?
The table?
Tabletop, yeah.
No, it's about an inch. But and in discussing it yesterday, I feel like maybe when the joints went together, dry, they were invisible. But I don't think I cleaned up my edge joints with a hand plane or anything like that. So maybe they weren't 100%. Maybe they were 94%, and that 6% is giving me that little ridge line.
Just run your finger.
We're thin. We're not talking 1/16 of an inch. I mean, you're talking.
You can barely feel it.
Yeah.
But I sit there eating dinner, and I just go, is that going to pop open? Is that going to pop open? But
feels like you can just take a really sharp scraper and just zip it off and not even hit the finish.
it feels like it.
Get some putty.
Yeah. Just put some caulk in there.
Caulk it.
But do you hand plane your edge joints?
Depends. Know if I can get away with it. And then if I have a really nice flat to slightly sprung joint with a little gap in the center, and like the joiner we have in the shop, really big long beds, you sort of know the secret stash of really sharp joiner knives. You should be sure to take them out before someone gets their recycled
Ben's
wood on
not
that
supposed
thing.
to know that yet.
And if you go nice and slow, I mean, that is just a mirror finish. But if you got some, if you have like a beat 6-inch joiner with dull blades and short beds, and you got like big heavy scallops and boards that are not coming together with just hand pressure, hand plane is probably a good thing.
Even
to
not a
break
heavy
out.
scallop. I have a 6-inch joiner. It's not as bad as Mike described, but I go by. If I run my finger along it. Sometimes it's not readily visible, but I run my finger along, I can feel the waviness, and so I usually do, if I'm working at home and I don't have the luxury of the big shop joiner here, I do dress it with a hand plane, but I don't spring the joint. Do you spring when you hand plane? Is that like a habit?
I absolutely try not to have a high in the center. And like I'll clamp one board in a vise, put the other one right on top. If I can kick one end of the top board and it sort of spins, I know that my high point is in the center, and I'll definitely take that out. I like a little spring if I can get it.
Yeah.
I can do that on the joiner. I learned this from Bob Van Dyke. He did an article for us way back on that. And if you just put more pressure down as you're jointing the edge of a board toward the center and just lighten up, there's enough flex in the entire mechanics of joining where you can actually machine a very slight spring joint to your boards.
No, it's not that easy. No, don't tell me that.
Yes,
It is. It's cake.
Because I've always the spring joint is very intriguing to me.
Yes.
I prefer the autumn joint, but sorry. At least Ben laughs at my jokes.
Because it's awkward if I don't know. But it's like I've just never had the guts to do it.
But the funny thing is, Mike mentioning that tip of spinning the board, that was in an article, right? Was that your article? Was that a Bob Van Dyke article? I remember seeing a photo.
I just did that on Instagram, quick little video.
Maybe
of
that's
it.
what that was. Okay, but yeah, it's it's a really good way, especially if you're hand planing, because you could easily kind of mess up that surface a little bit if you're off balance or not perfectly flat.
Yeah, actually, I think I heard that trick from Rob Percaro way back.
Okay.
He's written some articles for us in the past.
Wasn't he the drummer for Toto?
No.
That's
Jeff Picard.
that's Daryl Pert.
No,
That's Rush.
All right. I don't like it when they go off topic.
Get him.
Daryl Pert is a phenomenal green and green furniture maker who just happens to share the last name of the drummer in Rush.
Yeah.
So,
Neil Peart.
yes. Sorry, Daryl, if you're listening, apologize. Not that Daryl would listen to the podcast. He has better things to do, but I can fantasize.
All right. Well, let's get on to another segment. This one is Smooth Moves. Mike?
I think we've already been through quite a few so far in this podcast.
Podcast being one of them.
So, as I mentioned, I was teaching a rocking chair class this last week, and one of the most important things to get right on the rocking chair is the shaping of the armrest. I mean, it's all about comfort. It's sort of the most curves and most things happening going on, and I like to get that shaping just right. So, getting to the point of demonstrating how to shape the armrest was, for me, one of the key points of teaching the whole class. So I had my layout, I explained that. I talked about how the basic profile, the basic geometry of the joint, cutting an Aris curve and having establishing a curve by cutting a main chamfer with the block plane and then hitting those points and I ended up with a really nice arm. It was nice. It was like in my wheelhouse, and I felt pretty good about it. And then I went to attach it onto the rest of the chair to see how it looks. And I had sort of shaped the entire thing upside down. So, yeah, it's my upside down.
You didn't do both
chair.
of them upside down, right? So you could just flip flop them.
And the problem is, okay, so there's a fair amount of shaping that went into this. However, it's attached to the rear leg with angled double tenons. Which had already been cut.
There's no coming back.
And it's attached to the front leg post with a through mortise and tenon, which the mortise had already been cut.
There is nothing you could do to save that.
Is that piece in your office?
That piece. That's
the mistake.
No.
No, okay. There's a piece in there with the double tenons on it.
That's it. That was, that's a blank for it. I was able to flip it upside down and make it the opposite arm because I hadn't shaped that one yet.
Okay.
And then I took that arm and flipped it upside down and made it this one.
But wouldn't the tenons have angled in the wrong direction then?
I don't know. I worked that out, let's
Okay.
say.
We were talking about problem solving and building
Yes.
yourself into a corner.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, find your way out. Don't get in the corner, but if you do, know how to get out.
Yeah.
So
Punch your way out.
smooth moves are always especially sweet in front of an audience. So
Who are paying to take a class from you? It's a little value add.
so all the rest of that, you want to make sure you're checking your right side up over there.
Well, it's funny. you mentioned that back in, I think it was 2013 at Fine Woodworking Live, I was running a camera for Chris Bexford, and he was doing, I think, his lifetime of woodworking tricks or whatever. And he had this really cool display cabinet that he used for educational purposes. And he was talking about, I think it was the mortise and tenon joint or something. And I pointed out to him, hey, Chris, is that, he was explaining something about wood movement. I said, is that why you have a gap over here? And he says, a gap? and I said, yeah, there's a gap right over here on the bottom. And he says, no, that gap isn't supposed to be there. And thanks for pointing that out to everybody. And I was like, oh.
You got the camera trained on it.
No more questions from the camera operator. But it was great. Everyone got a laugh. And I mean, the truth is, woodworking, we're all human, and sometimes you goof and, you kind of roll with it. You rebound and move on. Yeah. It's good. Makes Mike human. He's not a machine.
I have enough of that going on as it is.
How about you, Ben? Do you have a smoothie?
So I'm making a toolbox, and I was making it out of anything that was lying around the shop. There was some 3/8-inch birch plywood that we got from our old shop manager, and it was all water stained and everything. So I was like, oh, I'll cut that piece off.
Was it water?
Huh?
It wasn't water.
Oh, no. But and just some pine I had lying around. I think it was like cutoffs from some shiplap I did in my kids' room. Just everything I can find. And so I decided to paint it, and so I milk paint it, and I do one coat, and I'm rubbing it down with steel wool to get the nibs off and everything, and I start putting the second coat on, and I notice there's some metallic speckles in the paint now. What's going on here? Why is there shimmers in this milk paint? Well, when I rubbed it down with steel wool, I didn't clean the work surface off, and the residue from the steel wool droppings, if you will, are now getting embedded in my paint as I work around the piece. And it was like, all right, well, that's the way that this toolbox is going to look. And now I'm just going to stick some stickers on it. And
That sounds like a finish line, man. Yeah. Glitter milk
speckled
paint.
milk
Glitter,
paint.
glitter
Does it
milk
show
paint.
up at the end? I would imagine it would just sort of get.
I could have put another coat on it and it probably would have been fine, but it's a toolbox. I just wanted to start loading it up with tools. So it is what it is.
Wow.
Shiny. Nice.
If I didn't point it out to you, you wouldn't know it. But
Speaking of the lumber you use in that, I remember a while back, I have some lumber still in the shop, and I had a cherry board with this incredible waterfall curl to it. It's just stunning. I've been saving it for years, and it's been in the shop. And Ben goes, like, Mike, are you going to do anything with that cherry? And I of course I wanted to hang on to it, but at the same time, it's like, I give it to Ben. He must have something really
I offered
special.
to buy it.
Yeah. So I thought you must have like this really special project, maybe, a blanket chest or a small tabletop where he saw this cherry and he was so stunned by it. Like, I have to use this. So I said, well, what are you going to use it for? And it's just wide enough. I'm just looking for a wide board. It's like, yeah, no, sorry.
It's not for sale.
it is a magic looking board. It really is.
Well, if you want to buy lumber from Mike, you have to go through the adoption process.
Yes, you do.
Fill out the papers and take the board home for a couple days and see if it gets along with the family.
I need to come by and check out your shop and your tools and,
How are you going to treat this board? That's hilarious. Yeah. Well, my smooth move is related to my all-time favorite tool of all time for this week, where I had gotten used to using a jig for all my sharpening. And
is it a Veritas Mark II?
It's the Veritas Mark II. It's the set. It has the roll. It has the pinchies for the.
Do you like that? Does it work well?
Yeah, it does. It keeps the blade square. Wally Wilson, I'll take $20. No, but no, this spoke shave. Hey, look at that blade. It's small, as everyone knows, and so I thought, well, it's been a while since I've freehand sharpening. I'll give it a whirl. And I thought I was having great success. I got the back flat and polished, and I'm working the bevel, the secondary bevel, and it looked good on with my bad eyesight. It looked like a nice polish, and I put it in the tool, and it just wouldn't cut. It just was like, and then I realized. Well, I think what happened is when my freelance technique was not perfect, and I think I wound up rounding over the secondary bevel more than anything else.
Just round.
It was polished round. I made a nice little like a round dowel almost. So I went out and I bought.
It continues, folks.
I bought a jig.
Veritas.
I bought a jig. I wasn't going to say Veritas. I bought a $20 jig for holding small parts, and I used that. And I was able to actually put it in the honing guide. But the smooth move about rounding the tip actually got bested after I got the blade honed. I put it into the shave, got it all set up, and I started trying to take a cut, and the darn thing wouldn't cut. And I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? Now I'm like completely befuddled. And then I realized I put the blade in upside down. So my second smooth move punked my first one. And so that's, you got a twofer.
Well, and that's a thin blade.
It's a thin
Freehanding
blade.
that blade would
It's
be
short.
really
It's
thin and short. So
Wow.
there's not going to be much.
I thought I had
reference
it, man.
either
I thought
which
I
way.
had it. I even, was scraping in an effort to keep it, the same angle every time I was scraping the flesh off my thumbs on the stone. But I don't know, double smooth move. Think we have time for another question? Feels like we're running long.
Jeff? Full time. We're good.
All right. Question number 5. This one comes from Eric. And Eric says, I was hoping you guys had some tips or tricks for assembling a tight box joint. As it stands, with no glue, I can work it together with a bit of force, and it will eventually fit. I am concerned that when I add glue, it is going to lock up and brute force could damage it. I'm hesitant to put any sandpaper on it as the joint is tight with no gaps. Was thinking maybe the oven to pull some extra moisture out of the wood, but worried that this might warp the rest of it.
Yeah, let's stay away from the oven.
That will work.
Turn the oven off, Eric. Walk away.
So, I mean, the oven, you're basically, if you shrink the whole thing, the little pins get narrower, but the gaps between the pins get narrower to the same degree. So I think my guess is that if it's tight, with a lot of moisture, it's still going to be tight with less. I'm going to go with there.
Yeah, so it's just a bad idea.
Okay. Well, the good news, if you can get it together without glue, you should be good. I've heard that, and I don't use this a lot, but a lot of people say one of the advantages of using liquid high glue is that it's really slippery, and it doesn't swell the joint or lock it in the same way that yellow glue does. So if pick up some high glue, that's probably going to do the trick for you, I would say.
Yeah, I like that about liquid hide glue.
Yeah.
It doesn't open time, blah blah blah, and as long as you're not like Matt and you use fresh hide glue, you should be fine.
Matt who?
Kenneth, Dr. Kenny.
All right.
You can use epoxy too, right? Doesn't epoxy kind of have that
It's
same...
pretty slippery. I would say so.
Polyurethane is also slippery, but you have to,
That's true.
we did, Craig Thibodeau did an article on using it and had some great tips, but, if you use too much, you're going to wind up.
That's right. And it doesn't
foam
introduce
everywhere.
water into the joint or something.
Yeah, and
like
he
that.
uses it for the reasons that it's slippery and it doesn't expand. So he's like banging joints together quickly, and he doesn't get the foam out because he knows how to use it.
Okay, so I know that some people, when they use polyurethane glue, they actually moisten one side of it.
Right.
Because the water helps the polyurethane glue cure. So he just does straight on, no water, no...
No, he does something.
He did something, and I don't remember what it was.
Okay.
But so I don't want to comment on that right now.
Okay.
I would prefer not to.
We'll have to ask Craig or check out the article. But I do remember something being moistened.
Yeah, and with the fit of a finger joint, you dial it in when you're cutting it, and you do your test joints, and then whatever you have is what you have. I'm assuming they're like, 1/4-inch finger joint, or I've even done 1/8-inch single blade with finger joints. And those little tiny guys, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. But
test pieces with finger joints are... I remember making a finger joint jig and like thinking I was going to lock it down and
have it forever.
And like 3 weeks or 3 months later, I was going to come back and be able to just throw it on there. I even had like the shims for my dado stack marked.
Oh.
It was this one that went with it. Didn't do any test cuts, and it was like, gone. No, not going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to test them every single time, I think.
Yes, one of those things. You're right.
I have nothing to add.
Okay.
I don't really use box joints.
Lots you don't.
Too many fingers. I couldn't imagine, putting some. I've had hard enough time getting the dovetails to line up. All right, let's get to some listener comments. This is from Wanna Be a Woodworker, and he or she says, couldn't disagree with Tom Fink more. I just wish the podcast was weekly. It's the best part of my commute home every other Friday. Thanks, and keep up the good work. And who is Tom Fink?
I went digging, trying to figure out who Tom Fink was. Because I was like, somebody's bad-mouthing us. I have no idea who Tom Fink is.
Google it.
Yep,
We'll have to Google
I did.
We're going
I
to
did.
find this Tom Fink and track down his words. The next one comes from Ren, and it says, I have been a loyal and faithful listener since this podcast began, It has a great balance of humor and woodworking information. I particularly enjoy the fact that there is often disagreement among the panelists, albeit good-natured, as to their techniques and approaches. Oh, Ben. Ben has been a particularly good addition to the group.
How did this one get in there?
I don't know how that... we should have edited this next time.
I agree with that, Ben.
Thank you.
You just
Ben's been a good addition.
Yes, absolutely.
From time to time.
Yeah. All right. Hey, we're going to do something new. This is risky. Every time we try something new, not every time. Sometimes it falls flat. We are going to recommend anything for our listeners and viewers to check out.
Quick recommendation.
So quick, Ben, come on.
Instagram account, Evan Court. His account is court.evan with an A, and making some incredible stuff. He shares a shop space with Matt Wada, and he's North Bennett Street student, and I think like Maine College of Art or something like that. But he's incredible account. I love it. He blows me away once a day.
All right, enough. Mike?
I've been rewatching Band of Brothers on HBO.
Oh, yeah.
I signed up for HBO to watch the current season of Game of Thrones. That's over. So I've been looking around. Band of Brothers holds up really well.
Oh, yeah.
Executive produced by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg. Good stuff.
Yep. I watched that over Veterans Day weekend.
Oh, cool.
I streamed it. Yeah, good. I can move on. Check out Amazon Prime if you're not already a member. It's awesome. It's $100 a year. You get free shipping. I had gone to a woodcraft store to buy a 1.5-inch diameter Forstner bit, and it was like $30. I bought it on Amazon Prime for half that, and I got free shipping. And you also get free access to Amazon Prime Music, where you can stream stuff. And I've been jamming on 70s and 80s albums in the shop and out of. So, all right. Amazon Prime. Veritas Prime. All right. That's it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. And don't forget to head on over to tauntonstore.com and use the discount code SHOPTALK to get 20% off your purchase. Please spread the word about Shop Talk Live to your woodworking friends and neighbors. Shop Talk Live is dependent on your questions, so make sure to send them in to shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that thumbs up button. And finally, you can keep up with Fine Woodworking on Instagram and on Facebook, and look for all of us on Instagram as well. Thanks for listening, and have fun in the shop.
You already said your spoke shave. You already said your spoke shave.
No, this is. I just got this today. Tom just brought this in. It's got nothing to do with my favorite tool. I'm just keeping it around. I just don't want to be very far from it right now.
Don't be milking the spoke shave.
Veritas Mark II Honing Guide. Veritas Mark II Honing Guide. Veritas Mark II Honing Guide. Veritas Mark II Honing Guide.
It's got the Veritas tool.
Veritas, the Mark II. Well, the Mark II comes with a roller that allows you to camber the blade. Veritas Mark II Honing Guide. Wally Wilson's on the line. Veritas Mark II Honing Guide.
Brought to you by Veritas. Is it a Veritas Mark II?
It's a Veritas Mark II.
Veritas.
I just lost my audio. Oh, came back. Wally Wilson. I wasn't going to say Veritas Prime.